You're 8 years old, flat on your back in the grass. It's the third day of summer, and summer has no end. September is a rumor someone invented to scare you. The afternoon stretches out like a whole country. You have nowhere to be. You will never have anywhere to be. Now you're 40, and that same summer, June, July, all of August, just happened in a single bright blink. You looked up and it was over. Here's the strange part. The calendar didn't change. A year is 365 days when you're 5, and 365 days when you're 50. Identical, mechanically perfect. But at 5, that year was 20% of everything you had ever lived. At 50, it's barely 2%. The same year, running 10 times faster. The clock got more accurate. Your life got quicker. Nothing is broken. So what, exactly, is disappearing? The first person to put numbers on this was a French philosopher named Paul Janet, writing in a Paris journal in 1877. His idea was almost insultingly simple. The length a year feels, he said, is a fraction, that 1 year divided by your whole life so far. To a 10-year-old, a year is 1/10 of everything they've known. To a 50-year-old, it's 1/50th. To a 1-year-old, a single month is an eternity, because it's a 1/12 of all the time that has ever existed for them. The cake keeps growing. The slice keeps thinning. Same knife, same cut. A smaller piece every single time. 13 years later, in 1890, the American psychologist William James picked this up at Harvard and added the part that hurts. It wasn't just arithmetic, it was novelty. The young, he wrote, are drowning in firsts, and firsts are what the brain bothers to keep. Modern memory science proved him right. Ask people of any age to name their most vivid memories, and they pile up in one strange place, between roughly ages 10 and 30. Researchers call it the reminiscence bump. Your memory is a city with one blazing, overbuilt downtown, surrounded by decades of dark, empty suburbs. Then, in 2019, a Duke University engineer named Adrian Bajan asked a stranger question. Not why we remember less, why we see less. Your eyes don't glide across the world, they jump. 3 to 5 times every second, freezing for 200 to 300 milliseconds between each jump to grab a single image. In childhood, those jumps come fast, and the images pile up. As the wiring ages and the pathways slow, you capture fewer frames per second of real life. Bajan first suspected this as a young athlete on a Romanian basketball team, noticing that when he was rested, time seemed to slow down, and he played better. Same hour of clock time, fewer pictures taken. Played back later, your life fast forwards. For a long time, all of this was theory. Until 2005, when 2 researchers in Munich, Mark Whitman and Sandra Lainhoff, actually measured it. They surveyed 499 people aged 14 to 94. And here's what's eerie. For short stretches, an hour, a week, a month, everyone, young and old, felt time rushing by at about the same rate. The gap only opened over the long haul. Ask how fast the last decade went, and the sense of speed climbs steadily with age, peaking right around 50. The years, not the minutes. That's where the theft happens. And underneath all of it, a chemical clock is quietly winding down. Brain imaging studies, led by researchers like Lars Beckman in Stockholm, show the brain runs an internal pacemaker, tuned by dopamine, the molecule of novelty and reward. From early adulthood on, your striatal dopamine drops by roughly 6 to 10% every decade. The metronome loses its tension. Fewer ticks fit inside each real second. And the world, still ticking along at its old pace, seems to pull away from you. So let's reconstruct a day. 2 days, really. The same person, 40 years apart. You wake at 7, 8 years old, and there's a crack in the ceiling you've never noticed before, so you study it. Breakfast is a small negotiation about cereal that feels like diplomacy. By 9, you're outside, and a bee stings you for the first time in your life. A bright, astonishing, unrepeatable fact. You taste something sour off a leaf because a friend dared you. You build a fort out of nothing, a structure that has never existed in the history of the universe. By noon, you've had a fight that feels like a war, and a reconciliation that feels like peace. The afternoon goes on and on and on. By the time the streetlights flicker on, your brain has filed 100 genuinely new images. The day is enormous because it is dense. You will remember that crack in the ceiling for 40 years. Now wake up at 40. The same alarm every single morning. The same shower where your hands move without you. The same commute past the same buildings you stopped seeing years ago. The same coffee, the same screen, the same names, the same problems wearing slightly different clothes. Lunch at your desk. The afternoon dissolves. You drive home in the dark, and if someone asked, you could not name one specific thing that happened. Not because nothing happened, but because nothing was new. Your brain, finding no firsts worth keeping, recorded almost nothing. And a year built out of 300 days like that one leaves so little trace that looking back, it barely seems to have happened at all. Same person, the same 24 hours, ticking identically on every clock on Earth. One of them is a continent. The other is gone before you've named it. Let's pause here, because this is the thing nobody tells you. Time is not speeding up. That was never it. What's happening is that your life is going dark to your own memory, because you stopped meeting the world as if anything in it were new. Call it the novelty collapse. The brain was never a clock. It's a recorder. It measures how long you've lived, not in seconds, but in how much new, distinct experience it bothered to write down. Childhood is wall-to-wall firsts, so it banks dense, time-stamped memory, and the years feel vast. Adulthood is built from repetition, the same rooms, the same routes, the same routines, so the recorder idles. And a year it didn't record is a year that in memory never happened. That's the whole trick, not the calendar, the encoding. So here's where you actually live now. You measure a year by how fast it vanished. Once, you measured a single afternoon by how much of the world it could hold. You moved to the familiar, recording nothing. Once, you met everything for the first time and saved all of it. Your decades blur into one long commute. Once, a single August was an entire era. The clock runs perfectly while your life slips past it. Once, the clock crawled because you were too busy being alive to watch it. And the cruelest part is how quietly the trade went through. There was no moment you signed for it. It happened on an ordinary Tuesday. A Tuesday exactly like the one you're probably having right now. When you chose the warm, safe sameness of routine over the exhausting, electric terror of one more first. You did it again the next day, and the next. And the bill came due in a currency you never saw leaving the account, the felt length of your own life. The years aren't running out faster. You've just stopped giving them anything to hold on to. And that, unlike the calendar, unlike the dopamine, unlike any of it, is the one thing still entirely in your hands.